So I'm going to be covering a decent amount of politics on this channel going forward because the election is coming up in only 2.5 months. And this is the most important election in American history. And so much is at stake. Our country is in a fragile place right now on many different levels. And unless this country starts getting headed in the right direction, the future of America might be at stake. A large majority of people, 73%, feel that our country is not headed in the right direction. At the same time, the political polls remain about dead even between Trump and Harris. So something's not adding up in all of this. People realize that this country is in a really bad place. However, this is not showing up in the political polls. Now, several shocking events happened this week in the Christian world. This points to the spiritual battle that lays ahead of us because of this election. The Bible says in Ephesians that we wrestle not of flesh and blood, that there's spiritual warfare, that there are angels and demons behind all of this stuff. And right now the church is divided like never before. Evangelicals for Harris this week used Billy Graham for their ad. And this caused a big problem because Franklin Graham would immediately push back on Evangelicals for Harris using his father in their ads. He clarifies his father's political positions, and then Billy Graham's granddaughter comes forward and endorses Evangelicals for Harris right after this. So we're going to take a look at how Billy Graham's granddaughter and many Evangelicals for Harris went woke and decided to vote liberal. So how did this happen? How did we get to this place? We're going to take a look at some of these videos and some of the statements made about all this, so you're going to want to stick with me to the end. Hi, my name is Joshua Simone. Welcome to my channel. The ministry's name is called Torn Curtain. That's because when Jesus died and rose again, the curtain in the Old Testament temple was torn from top to bottom. We now have a new covenant, a better covenant, and direct access to a relationship with God through Jesus' death and resurrection. So 80 to 85% of evangelicals vote Republican or conservative in the elections. And that was true during Trump's victory in 2016, where 81% of Christians voted for Trump and only 16% voted for Hillary Clinton. And that was mainly because the African-American evangelicals voted for her. Then in the last election, more than 8 in 10 white evangelical Protestant who attend religious service frequently, which is 85%, voted for Trump in this most recent election. 81 of those who attended church less frequently voted for Trump. So in both of these situations, over 80% of evangelical Christians voted for Trump. What does this tell you? Let's just look at the numbers. Let's just call balls and strikes here. If you're not voting for President Trump, you are in the slim majority, and you need to start asking yourself some questions and seek God and begin to ask the Holy Spirit to show you what is the truth at stake in this election, to not get caught up in personalities and who you like or who you don't like, but as people asking the Lord what is going to be the direct result of these two political candidates and their policies being implemented in America. In the next video, we're going to take a look at whether you can be a Democrat and a Christian at the same time. I should be releasing that in a day or two. But just based on the numbers just alone, they don't seem compatible if 85% of people are voting for Trump. It shows that the large majority of evangelicals back Trump and back conservative values. It should be added that the same thing is true on the liberal side as well, in that the fact is that if Joe Biden was half dead, a large majority of those people would still vote for him because they're not necessarily voting for the president of the United States. They are voting along party lines, along political lines. And many people have come out and said that. I don't care if Joe Biden didn't even have a pulse, he's getting my vote. So on the surface, it does seem that many evangelicals are now turning on Trump. Now we are seeing a pretty big movement emerge in the last 2 weeks, which is called Evangelicals for Harris. And they are making a big splash in the world, especially on Twitter. recently, Evangelicals for Harris released an ad, and what happened was Billy Graham opened up the ad with some of his preaching. So we're going to take a look at that right now.
And said, Lord, I have sinned. I'm sorry for my sin. I'm willing to change my way of life.
Have you ever asked God for forgiveness? That's a tough question. I'm not sure I have. I don't bring God into that picture. I don't.
So after Evangelicals for Harris decided to release this ad, Franklin Graham, Billy Graham's son, decided to push back on the narrative, explaining to people, let's take a look at this post. So Franklin Graham says the liberals are using anything and everything they can to promote candidates for Harris. They even developed a political ad trying to use my father Billy Graham's image to help promote her, or rather try to make Donald Trump look bad. They are trying to mislead people. Maybe they don't know that my father was a firm supporter of President Trump in 2016, and he appreciated the conservative values and policies of President Trump. And if he were alive today, my father's views and opinions would not have changed. President Trump isn't perfect. None of us are. But I believe he hasn't changed, or he has changed over the years. This recent assassination attempt had a huge impact on him, and I thank God that his life was spared. Okay, so Franklin Graham seems to clarify there that Billy Graham was firmly conservative, and he was a Trump supporter. He would have voted for Trump if he was alive today. So he makes his stance is very clear. His father was a political figure that seemed to have relationships with both people on the right and the left. I know when he had a crusade here in New York City, in Flushing Meadow Park, he had Bill Clinton speak at the event, and a lot of people were upset. But I think Billy Graham was an ambassador of Christ. I think he was looking to try to reach people, and he tried not to really get vocal a lot about his political beliefs. However, Billy Graham was a firm conservative and was a firm Trump supporter. So that settles the issue, and Franklin Graham wanted to get that out, that his father would have probably not endorsed his material to be used in Democrats for Harris. But this gets more ugly. So right after this, Billy Graham's granddaughter endorses Evangelicals for Harris and goes against what Franklin Graham says. So let's watch this video, but real quick. First, hit the subscribe button. I promise to bring you the best Christian content. I'm going to go after the tough and controversial subjects. Many people might consider this as being divisive, but it's these topics that really learn and teach us things, as well as my heart is for the church to be the best that it can be. So I'm going to present you with great content moving forward. So hit subscribe, okay? I'm trying to get to 100,000 subscribers, and 87% of my audience has not subscribed. So I don't know, maybe my videos aren't that good or anything, but I could really use that help. It'll send a message to YouTube. So let's take a look at Billy Graham's granddaughter's video.
My name is Jerusha Duford, and I'm grateful to have an opportunity to join you tonight. Thank you to everyone who joined this call to discuss a pivotal point in our country's future. Thank you.
Say, and then we'll take it on the other.
My name is Jerusha Duford, and I'm grateful to have an opportunity to join you tonight. Thank you to everyone who joined this call to discuss a pivotal point in our country's future. I was thinking this morning that if you told me 10 years ago that I would be taking an active role in politics, I'd have laughed. But then I had to stop and realize this is so much more than politics. My role began in 2016 when a man bragged about assaulting women. Various leaders of my faith then propped up this man as a poster boy for godly manhood and leadership. This broke my heart as I have watched, quite frankly, for the last 8 years, people who were curious about Jesus and his teachings done a 180 and walked in the other direction from my faith. Isaiah talks about an oak whose leaves wither and a garden going without water. These things happen slowly, over time. First, people professing the Lord made excuses for the lack of kindness. Then for the name-calling. Soon it was making excuses for assault. Then it became making excuses for January 6th, and now making excuses for convicted assault and 34 felonies. The oak leaves don't wither overnight, and I'm terrified to think of how far this turning our head the other way and making excuses will take our country, but more importantly, our witness to the world. One of my grandfather's favorite verses was Micah 6:8. What an incredible reminder of what the Lord requires of us: to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly. I've always stated that my president doesn't have to be a Christian, but I am and will be watching for my faith leaders support actions that reflect mercy, justice, and humility, and for my faith leaders to rebuke actions that are the antithesis of that. Voting Kamala for me is so much greater than policies. It's a vote against another 4 years of faith leaders justifying the actions of a man who destroys the message Jesus came to spread. And that is why I get involved in politics. I'm a therapist, and I try to leave my clients with what I call committed action steps. And the following are the ones I'd love for you to take with me. First, pray. Pray for the faith leaders in our country to take a stand for justice, mercy, and humility. Second, pledge. Take the Evangelicals for Harris pledge on our website, evangelicalsforharris.com. And lastly, service. Go perform actions of service in your neighborhood or community, and then come back and share your story with the Evangelicals for Harris campaign. Thanks for listening to me.
Okay, so you're seeing there Billy Graham's granddaughter. She starts to mention the Trump Access Hollywood tape that was pretty profane, and she mentioned his sexual assaults of women. She also mentioned January 6th, as well as his recent felony convictions within the court. And she seemed to be pointing to all around his bad moral behavior. And as a therapist, she can't support this type of behavior. Now, she does have some very valid points which should not be ignored. However, are we going to trust Billy Graham, who was a Trump supporter, was a valid conservative, or are we going to trust his granddaughter, who isn't a minister of the gospel and probably isn't qualified to speak on political issues? I'm going to go with Billy Graham on this one. I'm going to follow Billy Graham's lead on this one and not his granddaughter. A lot of points that she made up were very valid, and I don't think we should ignore those things. We're going to talk about it now. But a lot of this points to discipleship, unfortunately. We think we could just teach people about the Bible and leave it at that. No, we must teach people about politics and how Christianity and politics do overlap to a certain degree, and teach people how to vote to the best of their ability using biblical principles. And so the church isn't discipling people in politics, etc. Lance Wallnau says this, that a lot of people are calling for revival, and it would be nice to see a revival, but if millions of people get saved and we don't teach them how to vote and we don't teach them about politics, then it could leave a lot to be determined, okay? So that we need to teach politics. We need to talk about politics too as well. And Billy Graham was one of the greatest evangelists ever lived, but unfortunately he failed to teach his family about politics. And we don't want to follow in that same way. Let's talk to our children and our grandchildren not only about Jesus, but about politics and how to vote the best according to biblical values. So Billy Graham's granddaughter brought up some really valid concerns that need to be addressed. People's morality does matter. And I'm not overlooking some of the characteristics of Trump, that he can be a narcissistic to a degree. He can be petty. He could be immature. He could call people names. He could be a bit narcissistic. I'm not glossing over those things. I want to acknowledge all of those things. However, in recent times, Donald Trump hasn't done a lot of these things, particularly the gross moral behavior. It seems that since he started running for political office in 2015, 2016, he's been on the straight and narrow and not involved in the affairs and divorces and womenizing and stuff like that. So that should be taken into consideration in as well. Should someone's past discount them from leading in the future, okay? Considering that a lot of these moral failures, adultery and stuff was in the past. Well, it came out last week that Kamala Harris's husband, they're supposed to go through a vetting process with the FBI before they even run for political office. And it seemed that it's possible that he wasn't forthcoming on all the details. So the first gentleman, the second gentleman, which totally sounds totally ridiculous, by the way. It was reported by all the major news outlets that Doug, Kamala Harris's husband, cheated on his wife with the nanny and had a child with her out of wedlock. So this isn't moral behavior either, okay? And the story got a little more juicy than that. I'm not going to get into it. And also people would mention that Kamala Harris is no stellar moral person either. She spent most of her single life dating various men, and many people suggest that she slept her way to the top. I can't say that for certain. I don't think that anyone else can. You can't really necessarily prove that, but a lot of people say that that's what it looks like. And then we found out also last week that Harris's VP was arrested for drunk driving, okay, in a pretty ugly situation as well. See, do you see where this stuff leads to the finger pointing and blaming and deflecting on people's morality and stuff like that? People make mistakes and they do some terrible things, okay? Morality is very important. I don't want to undermine this, okay? But we should look at people's past, and we should be aware of who we're voting for. But it's also, it's important to acknowledge the poor behaviors of all these candidates. And a lot of this isn't right, and it's sinful. And sometimes, like Trump's Access Hollywood video, where he said he was grabbing different women and kissing different women forcefully, were downright deplorable. We should condemn these things. We should say Christians do not act like that. At the same time, we are not voting for the pastor of the United States of America. Okay, and it should be noted that that verse that she mentioned in Micah was talking about the way that a Christian should live. Okay, we should walk humbly, pursue justice, etc. But I don't think Trump is a Christian. And if he is, he's a very immature new Christian. So we wouldn't expect him to be living up to the verses in Micah. Okay, it seems like he's surrounded by a lot of evangelical pastors, but most people aren't really preaching the truth these days. So I'm not sure they're probably, especially the charismatic pastors, they're even preaching him the gospel. Okay, so the truth is that we have these two candidates. And yes, we should consider their morality, but we should be more focused on the policies that these people are going to enact. Because again, these people aren't pastors. There isn't moral requirements for political candidates in the United States. There are moral requirements for people to become a pastor, set first in 1 Timothy, the 3rd chapter, to be above reproach. There are qualifications for Christians to live to a certain standard. So basically, yeah, but for political candidates, we're voting for the policy of this person. Now, personality is what most people are going to look at. And I would say people that are simple or uneducated are going to be more focused on the personality of a candidate. But we're not, this isn't a popularity contest. This isn't the high school prom. We should be more focused on policy and not as much focused on personality. And then we should look at the policies that this person will enact and implement in their administration. And we should also ask ourselves, will those policies leave this country better or worse off? Those are the main things that we should be looking at here. Okay, so if you think about the last 3.5 years, do you want more of what we've seen in the last 3.5 years? And for me, the answer is a resounding no way. No mas, no more of this. Okay, the mortgage rates have tripled. The economy is in inflation. Mortgage rates, gas prices, prices of food, the prices of everything have went up. If you just look at just the economy alone, it's a disaster. The average American is struggling and suffering on so many levels. And then basically it's not a good situation. So if you just look at the last 3.5 years and you're sober about you and you have your wits and you can think with reason and not emotion, you would say to yourself, the last 3.5 years has not been good and we need a change. So yeah, I would like to connect with you guys on social media because I do think that at some point they will probably take down my YouTube channel or try to censor me or take it down or suspend it. So I want to connect with everybody on other platforms. My main platform is YouTube, but I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Rumble. and other things. So I want to connect with you on those platforms and stay in touch with you there too. You can check that below. It's in the description section of the video. Okay. And also I have an email list if you want to sign up to stay in contact with me in case my videos get taken down or the channel gets taken down. This has happened with a lot of Christians over the last few years. Okay. So Charlie Kirk did a video recently addressing the topic of Trump's behavior. And a young man asked him flat outright how he could vote for Trump considering his poor behavior and considering that Charlie Kirk is a Christian. And I thought Charlie Kirk's response was brilliant. You're not going to want to miss this video. His answer just nailed it on the head 100%. But before we get into that video, this video today is brought to you by Birch Gold. So in order for me to continue doing this channel, I did have to find sponsorships and different things to help fund the channel. A lot of time and effort go into this, and I was losing money. I was funding this on my own for several years now, and I can't continue to do that. So for the last 3 years, I was offered a lot of sponsorship opportunities. I turned them all down. I was just waiting for something that I really believed in, waiting for something that I feel would connect with me, my audience, waiting on God to send along the right promotion. And I believe that that is Birch Gold. So this video today is brought to you by Birch Gold, one of your most trusted sources in adding gold and silver to your investment portfolio. We live in uncertain times, and we're seeing a shaking in the stock market. We're seeing a moving towards digital currencies and cryptocurrencies, and the world seems to be shifting away from the US dollar at this particular point. And one way to secure or diversify your financial future is to make sure that you own precious metals like gold and silver. And you want to add those things in your 401k and IRA. This is something that me and my family are doing to hedge our bets on uncertain times. I saw this recently. They released a snapshot of Trump's portfolio, and I noticed that he owned $250,000 in gold. And part of the reason behind that is if currency tanks and loses all its value, we've seen that in other countries like Venezuela, and the dollar completely loses its value, these richer people tend to hold some value in gold. We've seen this with Senator Mendez here recently. He was caught. They raided his house and found, tons of gold bars all around his house. Because these richer people, these people that are wealthy, understand that the dollar could decline, the stock market could tank, and gold and precious metals will always hold their values. Now, all securities do come with risk. I am not a financial professional, so you're responsible to do your due diligence. But the people at Gold will give you a great education on gold and silver at Birch Gold, and they can help you make an informed decision. They can tell you about the past and present and future of precious metals, their prices, how it's went over the years. So in order to find out how to do this, you go to birchgold.com/torn curtain. That's BIRCH gold.com/torn curtain, and that will give you more information. You can get a free gold kit that will tell you how to get started in this and to secure your financial future because of the uncertain times that we're living in. Check that out. So now we're going to get into this Charlie Kirk video. I will have to stop it at times to make sure that YouTube does not give me a copyright strike, but we'll go through this video. He did a great job. This is going to bless you, I guarantee you.
Who, in many ways, is the antithesis of those values in Donald Trump.
I thought you were going to say Joe Biden.
Hi, Charlie. So my question is, you support Christian values, as do I. How do you support a man who, in many ways, is the antithesis of those values in Donald Trump?
I thought you were going to say Joe Biden.
What? Well, if it's a... You've supported Trump in the primaries, too.
Yeah.
So there was other options at that point.
Well, yeah, so you're asking why do I support a sinner?
Why do you support someone who...
Because you're obviously not a sinner, right?
No, I'm a sinner, but his whole life and his values are all the antithesis of what the Ten Commandments are and things like that.
Okay, so I'm not even sure what to make of that. Let's just look at his presidency. I mean, was he not an...
Okay, so it's important to note here, basically, that a lot of people are asking this question. So a lot of the people in the Evangelicals for Harris campaigns and a lot of the people that are going progressive and liberal and are growing on that side of the aisle. They have a huge problem with Trump's personality, his past, the way that he acts and stuff like that. And a lot of people are asking the question, how do I vote for somebody that doesn't act like a Christian? How do I vote for somebody that really seems to be vulgar and rude and all this other stuff? And I feel that Charlie Kirk gives the best response possible, but this kid is a very bright kid, and they engage in dialogue back and forth. So just stick with me here. This video is good. I guarantee you're going to like it.
An excellent president? Do you disagree?
Well, I believe that character matters in our leaders.
I do too. So actually, here's my #1 mark of character for a politician. Did you do what you say you were going to do? And Donald Trump did what he said he was going to do.
I'm sorry, do we have a wall across the whole southern border right now?
Well, we built a couple 100 miles of border wall.
But he said he was going to build a full wall.
Right, there were limitations for that. He shut down the government for 60 days over that. Hold on a second.
Wait, who is you?
I'm sorry?
You said you shut down the government. Who is you?
Donald Trump shut down the government for 60 days to try to get $4 billion in border wall funding. He put Schumer and Pelosi in his office. He did everything at his disposal while he was facing 2 impeachments and 1 ridiculous special counsel investigation. Southern border crossings went down to a 30-year low under Donald Trump. We had asylum seekers that were rejected back to their country of origin. You can nitpick certain things from the right to say, oh, I could have, would have, and should have. But let's go through the promises. Number 1, Donald Trump gave us and fulfilled the promise 3 excellent Supreme Court justices so that we had the reversal of Roe versus Wade. Hold on. As a Christian, will you give him credit for that?
I give him credit, but are you saying any other Republican president would have done the same thing?
George W. Bush gave us.
Okay, so great. 2 great points right there. Trump gave us these 3 conservative Supreme Court justice and overturned Roe v. Wade. He's saying here any other conservative person could have done that. Nobody has. Nobody else has challenged Roe v. Wade. They didn't. We didn't have the Supreme Stack Court that we have right now. And so Trump did these things. And other political candidates did not. And I would consider the overturning of Roe v. Wade the biggest political victory in my life. The second biggest political victory would be appointing these 3 conservative Supreme Court justices. This is the only thing standing in the way of this country being completely destroyed right now. And they had 2 big rulings recently on gender and stuff like that want to bring this country into further gender madness, and the Supreme Court stopped it. Thank God for the Supreme Court. So if anybody wants to talk about Trump's moral and character flaws, we also need to talk about his successes, that he did build large sections of the border wall. He did fulfill his promise. Senate and Congress didn't always get behind him on that. Let's continue in the video.
A liberal Supreme Court justice.
John Roberts
voted against us on critical issue
on
after
which ones? Besides Obamacare?
Roe versus Wade.
He was against us on
It
Roe
was a
v. Wade?
5-4 decision, not a, I believe. I could be incorrect.
I thought it was 6-3, but I may be wrong.
You might be right on that. I don't want to speak out of turn. However, he voted against on many of the other issues recently. By the way, Roberts is very liberal. Okay. So secondly, George H.W. Bush gave us Anthony Kennedy. It might have been Reagan. Either Reagan or Bush gave us Kennedy.
They wouldn't have been elected in 2016. If you had Ted Cruz, if you had Marco Rubio, they would have given us 3 people that match Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, and Coney Barrett.
Bush gave us liberal tilt justices. And that's number 1. But let me just ask a question. George W. Bush, did he ever speak at the March for Life?
I'm not aware of that.
No, he didn't, because he was a pro-abortion Republican because his wife was pro-abortion.
Trump can't even sort out his own take on abortion now.
That's another big thing. Trump is the first U.S. president to show up at the March for Life. Okay, someone who supported the overturning of abortion. That is another huge thing. George W. Bush, who was a Christian, as well as Jimmy Carter, none of them attended the right to live rally. So that's another huge point. Let's get back to the video.
Well, hold on a sec. You keep on changing the script here. You came here as a question is, how can I, as a Christian, support a sinner? We all agree we're all sinners.
As opposed to other candidates who probably have better character in the primaries, like Ron DeSantis.
What do you mean by character exactly?
Like not having a history of adultery, not having a history of immorality, mocking Mike Pence for praying in the White House.
So you believe that anyone that has wrongfully cheated on their wife should be disqualified from leadership, public office, all that stuff, yes? So your standards are higher than God's when King David became king over Israel, just so we're clear.
When they haven't shown the proper remorse for those actions.
Okay, well, you don't know what remorse he has shown or is not shown. But secondly, I'm not going to get into like the deep thicket here of defending Donald Trump's personal life, because we're in a binary right now. And the binary is very simple. Instead of moralizing against a man who's facing 700 years in federal prison for trying to put the American citizen first, I think we as Christians should get on our hands and knees and thank God that we have a fighter that is willing to actually go to D.C. and fight for us against that very regime. So hold on a second. You say, how can I as...
So that's another good point. A lot of people don't realize is the political persecution that Trump is experiencing right now. And some of it he did to himself with his big mouth. But there's a lot of political lawfare that he's facing right now that is just huge. And the reason that he's facing it is he's been a hammer for conservative values. He's been a hammer towards away from globalization, putting America first, away from entering in the New World Order. And because of that, the government, people like Nancy Pelosi and people that are established politicians just hate Trump. And he is standing in the way of their agenda. He is standing in the way of the New World Order. And that's why he's experiencing this persecution. Some of it is because of his own behavior. But some of this persecution is unparalleled. We never seen anything like this in American history. And Trump is standing for things. And let me just tell you this, the next side of that, they're coming for Trump now because he stands for conservative values. He stands for biblical values. He's fighting against the global order. But the next part of that is that when Trump is no longer here, they're coming for you. They're coming for you next. They're coming for Christians next. And so many other people, missionaries in other countries and prophets have said this. Get ready for persecution. Wake up. They're coming for you next. They're coming for Trump now, but they are coming for you next. Wake up.
As a Christian, I look at Samson, I look at David, I look at sinners throughout the Bible that were used for God's purposes. Do you recognize that?
Yeah, but are you saying that sinners are better than people who have less sins? Because if you looked at someone, just for example, like Ron DeSantis, who has, in my opinion, a much better character than Donald Trump, are you saying that he wouldn't have gone to D.C. and fought for the values that you're saying Trump would fight for?
So I didn't support DeSantis. I like DeSantis. But let's talk about character. By all objective measurements, George W. Bush had better character than Trump. Loyally married, never accused of adultery, Christian. He gave us the Iraq War. He gave us the Afghan war.
I mean, you could point to one person.
Hold on, no, hold on. I'm talking about the only other Republican president of the 21st century, not one other person. Want me to point to his father, H.W. Bush?
What about Reagan?
Reagan is not as good of a president as Donald Trump. Reagan gave us no-fault divorce, mass amnesty. Reagan also expanded the national security estate. Reagan was a fine president, but nowhere near as effective of Donald Trump president. So that's the question ahead of us, which is, if you only look at character, which is your version of character, I don't share that version of character. It's, does the politician do what he says he's going to do? And he did what he said he was going to do.
Well, not really.
He did that in abundant terms.
Well, he did some of the things he said he would do.
Let's get to another one. Blessed are the peacemakers. You and I as Christians both believe that, right? How many new wars were started under Donald Trump?
But zero were started under Jimmy Carter also. I mean, that's not really...
hold on, we're talking... Yeah, you're right. And zero were started under, like, I don't know, William Buchanan or something. I don't know. Like, you can go way back into the presidential register here. I'm not advocating for Jimmy Carter's presidency from hospice, okay? It's a very simple question, which is, in the modern era, from Clinton to Bush to Obama to Trump to Biden, those are 5 presidents, okay? Only one of those 5 did not start a new international, reckless, adventurous war in any theater. And
so that's another big point there. Forget about his personality. Forget about the fact that Trump is narcissistic, immature, and all those things, which he really is. But the point is there was not one war under his administration. And everybody said he was a loose cannon. Everybody said that he would get us into World War III because he was going to be too hot-headed and stuff. Actually, it was his strong personality that kept us out of wars, because there was that unpredictability factor with Trump, and he kept us safe. They started no wars. He withdrew us from the wars and started withdrawing from Afghanistan. And Trump's administration was the closest and the safest 4 years in the last decade, because he kept us safe. And that should be considered. Look at the geopolitical situation we have now. We have Ukraine, we have Israel, Hamas, we have things spiral out of control in the United Kingdom and different other places. We have China and Taiwan basically on neck and neck to go to war. So really think about this stuff. Think about the fact that Trump kept Kim Jong-un in his place, and he was a massive, massive problem. And Trump somehow made friends with him, kept him peace. We didn't have any problems with North Korea. So that was another thing. I think Trump should have won the Nobel Peace Prize for that. Just that alone. Because just to know that there's this psychopath with interballistic missiles on its watch, and he's not talking with our government now, it's another big problem, North Korea. Obama told that to President Trump. He said, that's the biggest problem you have. Trump squashed it. Let's continue.
And that guy is named Donald Trump. That for me is like a decision, is like a massive, massive issue, especially when you look at the carnage and the funding. I mean, you don't want war. You're a Christian.
No, I'm not saying everything Trump did was bad.
Fair enough. Okay. But so let me ask you a question. I mean this sincerely. Is there anything he can do to win you over?
I mean, I'll probably end up voting for him just because I don't like the other side. But I would have much rather preferred someone else from the primaries.
Fair enough. I think you're coming after this from a fair perspective, but I would challenge you not to just throw around.
I like RFK, though. I might vote for him.
Okay, well, then you're going to vote for a pro-abortion, pro-choice guy who would put radical left-wingers on the Supreme Court that would never win. But it's fine. You live in Washington, so your vote doesn't matter that much anyway. But it's true. I mean, it's unfortunately a super left-wing state. And just so we're clear, RFK is also an adulterer. I don't know if you've looked into that. So if your criteria is kind of falling apart. So I will just emphasize this, which is, as a Christian, it is tempting to try to impart our disciplined moral walk on every single politician that runs for office. I totally get that. Instead, I take a step back and I say, who has actually done the things to fulfill the policy agenda that I think glorifies God? And that is Donald Trump. It's not even close. Okay, so I thought that Charlie Kirk made some really good points there. Trump is no Christian. He doesn't act like a Christian. Let's just be honest about that, even if he is a Christian. And the truth is, but what Charlie was saying is, let's look at his policies. Let's look at what came out of his administration. Let's look to see if he fulfilled his political goals and the things that he said he was going to do. And to a large part, he did, and gave us some huge political victories. So Trump's behavior should not be excused. And a lot of his behaviors should be condemned. A lot of the ministers should condemn the man and some of the behaviors. At the same time, he did some really great things for the evangelical church, and even pushed back some measures that were starting to come into play that were going to cause controversy, which were going to cause persecution for Christians. Remember that persecution is going to come through legislation. The way that Daniel was thrown in the lion's den because of the bad laws that were passed, that's what's going to happen in America, especially around the LGBTQ issue. There are going to be laws that pass. They're going to say you're going to have to do this marriage, or you're going to have to hire this person, or you're going to have to work for this person. And there were starting to be some problems that would have led for evangelical Christians, and Trump came in and boom, pushed back those expanded religious liberties, etc., and pushed that back. So Trump really did a lot of good things for the evangelical church, more than any president that I could remember in my lifetime. As he said, Charlie Kirk said, President Reagan and President Bush did some pretty liberal things, where Trump kind of stick to the conservative agenda. So, so we should not just totally ignore Trump's moral failures. However, in recent times, it doesn't seem that he's been the husband of one wife, and he doesn't seem to be chasing women or doing those things since he's been running for president. He seems that he's committed to his family and this country and working hard. He's done some things in the past. We acknowledge those things. But the truth is his policies have really helped out the evangelical church. So how did the church end up this divided? This is the last part of the video. Stick with me here, because this is going to explain a lot of things that have happened. How did the evangelical church start to lean left or Democrat? How did we get Billy Graham's granddaughter running for Harris, evangelicals for Harris? How did we even get evangelicals for Harris? How are we seeing a lot of big name, high profile Christians coming out against Trump, like Russell Moore and many others? And what happened is the church started leaning
left, it started leaning progressive, and even in some cases, extremely woke. Others were embracing socialism, Marxism, critical theory. That ended up into a church that I was attending, a large, well-known church. And I said, not today, Satan, not on my watch. I challenged the whole church by myself. I'd do it again if I had to. But the truth is that stuff does not belong in a church. Socialism, Marxism, communism, critical race theory, none of that belongs in the church. But how did this happen? How did we get to this place where these policies have seemed to get in the evangelical church, where we've seemed to be 85% all on the same page pretty much, except for the African American church, which leans liberal. But that's another thing. Even they are starting to wake up. Some of their preachers are coming forward and saying, nope, we can't support this administration anymore. People like Kanye and other people, as unstable as Kanye is sometimes, endorsed Trump and started following him. So Megan Basham released this book called Shepherds for Sale. It was number 12 on the New York Times bestseller list. It turned to be something that would shock the evangelical world, send shockwaves through the evangelical world. And I was just sitting there reading, and my hands were shaking a little bit because it was the most shocking and disturbing thing that I've ever read. Liberals and progressive wanted to get through radical agendas. They wanted socialism, Marxism, communism, critical race theory in churches. And they realized that one big problem was the evangelical church was so strong, was so conservative, was so Republican that they couldn't implement any of their policies because the church was standing in the way. The church was standing in the way of the liberals and the progressives, and they couldn't get anything done. So they tried to battle us head on and realized the Christian church is not going anyplace. They're not going to win that way. So what happened was they took a backdoor approach, and many of the liberals and progressives started saying, let's work with the pastors of these churches, give them money, give them education, and indoctrinate them with liberal and Marxist theology and sneak it into the church that way. We'll go through the back door. And they actually explain in the book how the pastors took it like a baby eating candy because they were getting money, they were getting wined and dined from some big organizations, they were being treated with respect, and these pastors bought it hook, line, and sinker. And what they did was started bringing liberalism, progressivism, Marxism, communism into Christian churches. Now, if you just use common sense, right? Communism is anti-God. Doesn't believe in God. It believes that God is the government. So how could we have any communist ideologies in the church when Marxism, critical race theory is incompatible with God? It doesn't make sense. And when I saw this, I said, I'm fighting this. I'm fighting that. And I'm going to continue to fight woke. I'm going to continue to fight liberals and the progressives. I'm coming after you. And if you're the ones infiltrating this stuff in this church, I'm coming for you. And I'm going to call you out. And we've got to sometimes be like Jesus with the whips in the temple, flipping tables, saying, this don't belong. This is stopping people from coming to God. This is stopping people. This has become a den of thieves. And sometimes you have to drive some of this stuff out with whips. Sometimes you have to flip tables. Sometimes being a nice Christian is not good. Yes, we want to be kind. We want to have the fruits of the Spirit. We want to be nice whenever possible. But like Ecclesiastes says, there is a time and a season for everything. And this is a season for war. And if people bringing this woke, progressive, liberal agenda, I'm going to face you head on every step of the way. I'm going to be in your face. I'm going to be vocal. I'm going to be aggressive. And every single ounce and strength that I have, I'm going to drive this woke nonsense out of the church by the power of God. I'm not standing up against this. There's 80 to 100 million evangelicals in the United States of America, but this liberalism has progressed in. And she explains it in this book, Shepherds for Sale, which I suggest that you get. That radical people like George Soros and eBay's founder basically started throwing money at the church to push Marxist and socialist and critical theory within the church. And it worked. And it worked. And Megan Basham names names. People like Rick Warren, J.D. Greer, Ed Seltzer, Russell Moore, the Southern Baptist Convention, denominations were all involved in this stuff. We're all involved in progressive, socialist, Marxism, critical race theory, and she shows how these key critical leaders have brought this stuff into the church, and it's like a cancer in the church. And let me just say to you, some of these men have done some things, but shame on you, Rick Warren. Shame on you, J.D. Greer, for bringing this woke nonsense in the church. And if I ever see you in person, I'm going to tell you that to your face. And I'm going to tell you that what you did was disgraceful. What you guys done by bringing in this liberal progressive agenda into this church is disgraceful. And we should be driving these people out of ministry and sending them into retirement if they don't repent. See, she even shows that Rick Warren was in bed with the World Economic Forum. What is Rick Warren doing talking about vaccines and agenda and global agendas? And why is he partnering with these people? What does Rick Warren have to do with any of this? And the choice is what Megan was saying, is that these people influenced them more than they thought they were influencing them. I'm sure some of these people started off with good intentions, wanted to just help out, but it ends up that these forces, these liberal forces, ended up affecting them more than they were affecting the situation. So basically, a lot of these people went woke and progressive. J.D. Greer did respond to all of this and push back on some of the claims. But man, he's on a really slippery slope. He just, yeah. So we're going to leave some room for these type of people to repent and renounce this stuff and turn away from it. And if they do, they should be accepted into the church. But if they don't, they should be driven out of the church the way Jesus drove out money changers out of the temple. We should get rid of them and run them into retirement. So the premise of Basham's book was basically showing how the leftists have infiltrated the church through using secular foundations and different think tanks, big multi-million-dollar companies, deliberately targeting Christian media, Christian universities, mega churches, nonprofits, and entire denominations, not to mention high-profile pastors and influencers. In exchange, many of those church leaders and institutions have received cash, career jumps, prestige, and praise. So she uncovered the corruption and the compromise at the highest levels of the evangelical leadership. And she followed the money, she names names, and she offered proof of all of these findings. Some people did push back on the claims, but you cannot ignore the fact that Megan Basham is onto something. The evangelical church is compromised. It is compromised. It's been infiltrated. Socialism has entered in. Marxism, critical race theory has entered in. And it came to churches that I was a part of, and they're coming to churches near you. Should we fight for social justice? Absolutely. Should we fight for equality for people? Yes, absolutely. We don't do that with Marxist theology. We don't do that with critical race theory. We do it in a biblical fashion. And so the evangelical church is largely involved in this, and she names a lot of her high-profile names. And if the evangelical church does not get this stuff out of the church and repent of this stuff, it's finished. It's finished. And they're finished anyway in many aspects, because the only churches that are really growing worldwide are the charismatic churches. The charismatic movement is, 700 million in it. So evangelical churches are on a decline. It's on to charismatic churches. Charismatic churches definitely have their own problems, but we must fight back against this. We must fight against Marxism, communism, critical race theory, or critical theory. They have no place in the church. None whatsoever. Marxism is communism. It's directly opposed to God and Christianity. They believe the government is God. Wake up, people. How did this stuff get into the church? And Megan describes this whole process. You could read the book. I'm about halfway through it, and I'm just sitting there with my mouth open the whole time. So we have a battle to fight. And me personally, I'm going to be someone that continually fights against this stuff. I'm going to be pretty aggressive. I'm going to call out names. And I will chase certain people down. We're to smash Baals. We're to smash altars too, as well. We are to fight as Christians. We are to contend. We are to do spiritual warfare. We are to reprove, rebuke. It's not always just sunshine and rainbows. It's not always just being kind. Jesus was not some hippie picking lilies with his friends in a field. He confronted religious leaders. He confronted people. He confronted politicians. He did battle. He battled his disciples at times and rebuked them. So basically, this isn't all sunshine and rainbows. We are to contend for the faith. We are contend for the Christian faith. And we need to get this garbage, this liberal garbage, we need to eject it out of the church. And it's a cancer that's coming to destroy the church. It's already taken over the black church, that's for sure. And it's not served the black church well either. So I'm personally going to go after these people, these ministries, and I'm going to run them out of ministry. And I'm committed to do that with the help of God on my part in this ministry. And I want to be someone that teaches conservative values, conservative politics, that teaches politics to the church. So speaking on left versus right, Kamala Harris's father was taught in college and taught on Marxism. Okay, so Kamala Harris is not just left or a Democrat. She is wide left or radical left. And in fact, she was considered the most radical left senator in the whole entire Senate. So this isn't just a matter of left and right. She is radical right. And when she comes into office, she is going to be even more radical than even Joe Biden is, who has opened up the floodgates for this LGBTQ nonsense and these gender issues that we're seeing. You know, I told the story in my last video. I was in the gym and I hear people screaming, and it's because a man with a beard was in the locker room. And I'm saying, no. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing any of this. This is craziness. This is crazy. So basically all these women are running out half dressed. Oh my God, there's a man dressing and getting naked in the closet. One woman said, I've never seen another man, has never seen me undress in my whole entire life. Only my husband. What is this guy doing in there? It's total craziness. We can't get behind any of this stuff. So let's just be honest. Because Harris is so radical left, because she's a radical Marxist who wants communists and Marxism and socialism, she was able to sneak through the ticket. And the way that they packaged this, right, and this is going to be controversial, was they tried to push it through on the fact that she was a woman and a minority. So if you speak up against Harris, you're sexist. If you speak up against Harris, you're racist. And it's actually a master plan what they did, because people aren't going to criticize her radical left agenda, her record as a DA. Remember, she's from San Francisco, and San Francisco is destroyed right now. My business attorney is from San Francisco, and he lived there for 40 years, and he said, I'm out of here. She's destroyed the most beautiful place that I've lived my whole life. I'm out of here. It's destroyed. Okay, so it's just crazy. So yeah, so Kamala Harris is not going to, her record is not going to be brought up that she's radical left. And the reason why it's not going to be brought up, because she's a woman and she's a minority. And if you attack her, you're going to look racist and they're going to play the race card on you. I'm just being honest, okay? I'm from New York City. So a lot of my neighbors, most of them aren't white, okay? So I'm not living in a white boy town. It's everybody from all over the world is here in Queens, New York. I love everybody of all color, creeds, nationalities. I love it. I would, if I could, live here for the rest of my life. I don't like being in just all white neighborhoods, me personally. I'm comfortable in a city environment because I love all people. God loves all people. And when we're in heaven one day, it's going to be really, really diverse. And so I'm looking forward to all of that and stuff. So in closing, in this next election, let's reject this wokeism. Let's reject this nonsense. Let's reject Marxism, socialism, critical theory or critical race theory, right? This infiltrated one of my churches, a big churches. It went woke. And I said, no way, not on my clock. You go liberal. And I said this in the statement. You go liberal and you become a place where the Spirit of God once was. Because the Holy Spirit doesn't stay around with that type of agenda. He leaves the building. And sometimes it's hard to know because he'll just leave kind of slowly, but eventually he ain't there in that building anymore. And so we got to reject this stuff and fight back of it and get it out of the church. And we need to have a violent eviction notice to this woke nonsense and get it out of the church. Do we want to be compassionate people? Do we want to care about the poor? Do we want to care about the immigrants? Yes. Do we want to care about social justice? Yes. Martin Luther King Jr. is one of my heroes. I want to see social justice. I want to see the church taking care of the poor. I want to see, the marginalized and the oppressed. But we want to do this according to God's ways. We want to do this way that God would want to see these plans implemented. It's going to be through the church, not through the government. These ideologies want to see the government do this, when the church should be the one that steps up to help those. Remember, the Bible says that true religion is taking care of the orphan, the widow, the poor, the oppressed, the marginalized. This is a big part of Christianity. And we lost focus with the prosperity gospel. Everybody in America is trying to be the next millionaire or trying to be famous. We forgot about the poor, and we need to get back to that. But we're not doing it through communist, socialist ideologies. We reject that. So 80 to 85% of the church votes conservative and for the Republican Party. And if you're in the small minority, that 15%, maybe you're just smarter than the rest of us. I don't think so. Do some praying and soul searching to see if you are on the right side of history. And don't follow your feelings. Don't look to personality of candidates. Ask God, what is the right side for this election? Ask him of who to vote for. Because I don't think this nation will survive long term if we lose this election. This nation is finished. So if you want to be on the side of Billy Graham, if you want to follow Billy Graham's counsel, one of the greatest evangelists all time, it's the greatest leader in my lifetime, let's just be honest. Or do you want to follow his woke and sentimental granddaughter, who seems like a nice person, right? She seems like a nice person. She's a counselor and a therapist, wants to help people. That's a great thing. But she's not qualified to speak on the issues of church and politics, etc. She's not. She's a therapist. So she should probably just stick to therapy. I'm following Billy Graham on this one, and if Billy Graham were alive, he would be having a long conversation with his granddaughter, telling her that he stands for conservative politics, conservative values. He voted for Trump in 2016, and he would be voting for Trump if he's alive. Just remember that. Be blessed. Thank you for watching the video today. So comment down below if you have any questions, concerns, comments. Maybe I said something that was wrong. Point it out to me. I can take it, but I'd love to hear what you think about everything that's going on politically this next election. Kamala Harris, Evangelicals for Harris, what Billy Graham said, what her granddaughter said. Comment down below. If you're listening from another country, please state that. I'd love to greet you personally. There are people watching from 30, 40 different nations from around the world, and I'm just so happy that you guys are visiting the channel and watching. I'm going to do my best to reply to the first few comments that come in on the videos, but I cannot reply to every comment or email that I get at this point. It's just too many. It's hundreds a day. So basically, if you would like to support the channel so I can continue to do videos like that in the future, this would be greatly appreciated. I've been funding the ministry by myself for 3 years. I can't do it anymore. So you can hit the give button right on YouTube, or you can check the video description below to find out how to give a one-time donation via PayPal or Cash App or Zelle. But if you really like the content, please consider becoming a monthly partner. You can do that on YouTube by hit the join button or join on Patreon. Okay, you will see that information in the description section as well. Monthly partners will get extra perks, and I can interact with you a little bit closer. And I really can't continue to do this ministry long term without getting more monthly supporters. So consider that if you really like the content. Thank you for listening today. Remember, Christianity is three things. It's to love God with your whole heart, mind, and soul, to look upward to him. That reality comes inside of you. It changes you. And then secondly, you take that and you go outward and you love other people. So if you love God upward, it will extend outward. If you're not getting along with people, if you don't love people, you have to check your connection with God, because if you truly love God, you will love people. They are mutually exclusive. They can't be separated. So if you're constantly having issues and fighting with people and having fractions, divisions, dissensions, you need to work on your relationship with God. This way you could go outward. Other people can experience. God gives you his love. It comes inside of your heart. I felt God's love come upon me about 10 years ago in just such a supernatural way. I just knew that he loved me. I knew that he cared about me. I knew his claims were greater on me than anything else in the world. His love came over me, overwhelmed me, and now I take that love and I go outward and I give it to other people. I love other people. And the last part of this is the Great Commission, which is to go out into the world preaching the gospel, baptizing people in the name of the Father, Son, Holy Ghost. It's to tell people that Jesus died, he was buried, rose again, so that you can have forgiveness of sins, that you can have relationship with God, that you can have eternal life and live with him forever. That it is the good news that Jesus set you free from guilt and shame and all the bad things that you've done. He wants to give you a new beginning, new life, set you forward, give you peace, joy, righteousness in the Holy Spirit, and give you a purpose in this life. But you must turn to him and trust him. So the third thing Christians want to do is get that message out, the gospel message. Thank you for watching today. Be blessed.